Assalamu alaikum listeners and welcome to another edition of The Future Show here on Inspire FM. I'm your host Amar Azam. The Future shows a look at all things careers and education. In this edition we feature an interview with three inspirational figures, Farheen Ahmed, Hannan Ali and Saman. Like me, many of our guests are part of the Unleashing Potential network. Through their efforts, they support the charity's work in communities around our town. They share with us their career journeys, reflecting on the highs and lows. They also speak about growing up in the Dowlow area and how it contributed so much to their development. If you'd like to join the network and be a part of creating change in our communities, drop us a line here at Inspire FM. Farheen, describe your journey into law.
Yeah, sure. So just going back a bit, I studied at Chorney High School for Girls, did my GCSEs there. I was quite strong academically from the beginning, particularly in subjects such as history, English, those sort of subjects that are more driven towards law. Um, and then continued those academics at Luton Sixth Form College, generally strong across the board, similar subjects, history, English. But in my free time, I was doing a lot of sort of community projects, community work, charities, um, building up the skills which naturally drove me towards the legal profession. So debating, teamwork driven exercise, things like that. So then I started exploring the legal profession when I was 17 years old, starting with local law firms, reaching out to firms, trying to get some experience, trying to understand what law really was, because I didn't have anybody in my family that had gone on to law prior to me. And I just wanted to explore it. It was only when I got into college where I met teachers around me who saw a lot more potential than I saw in myself. And I remember one of the teachers pulling me for a chat and saying, you have very, very strong academics. You should consider law beyond the local legal arena, go into the city, but also consider some of the really good law schools. I think at that point, that's when I realized actually I have a lot more potential than I knew at that moment. When I started exploring city firms, I applied for an internship at Magic Circle Law Firm, which was one of the 5 best firms in the world, through a social mobility organization at the time that Sixth Form were working with. Got a place on that, and that's when I really encountered international law in the city, and that's when I really started to dream a lot bigger than what I knew. It drove me to pursuing law at a leading law school. I studied at the LSE in London, and then I started considering firms in the city. What kind of lawyer do I want to be? Um, so it's quite a long journey, but one that had a lot of steps to it. And then I worked really hard to complete my A levels, get into uni, started applying for firms around the city, and that's when I ended up at the firm I'm at right now, which is Hogan Lovells. It's a global elite firm, and when I look back, it's a huge achievement from where I started, because the Chorney High School for Girls students I didn't know much about law at all, coming from a family where nobody had gone on to careers such as law, um, and then sort of proactively trying to break that glass ceiling, get into what is very difficult profession when it comes to the sort of higher level international legal framework. But so that's my journey, and there's been a lot of pieces to the puzzle, but you know, I would there's a huge support behind in terms of the local schools and the local colleges and just things that have helped me become the person I am right now.
Farheen, thank you. Lots of interesting, interesting insight there, especially the references to there not being anyone in your family, and you sort of treading your own path as well. And we'll pick that up later on in the show, actually. Saman, similar question for yourself. Now, you work for Deloitte as a finance analyst. You've got
Yes,
a
correct.
background. Similar question for yourself. Well, describe your journey.
Okay, thank you. So, I have a very similar background to Fareen. So I went to Chorney High School for Girls, also went to Luton Sixth Form College, and from then on, I think I'm obviously now in the accounting profession. So I think my journey to go into accounting sort of stemmed from high school. I always wanted to be an accountant. I think we had maybe sometimes some of the big four coming in, giving us sort of insights to careers and things that you can go into. So I had sort of set my mind that I want to do accounting from there. And then I went on from high school into Luton Sixth Form College, did my A-levels. My A-levels were actually not accounting based, so they were English language, which I also loved, law and economics. So I did know that you don't have to do an accounting A-level to do that at university. So I didn't pick accounting at A-levels, but that was also another thing that I wanted to do, subjects I did do at A-levels. And then from then on, I sort of just looked into going into accounting to pursue my degree in accounting. And the whole concept of going to university at Luton was also a big thing, that make sure you don't go to university in Luton. You might not be able to get the jobs that you want to in accounting, but I was so lucky that I actually landed a job in one of the big four companies, so it's Deloitte. So that was also my journey, obviously, for accounting, which sort of stemmed from high school to university, all in Luton. So yeah, that I think I owe it all to a lot of supportive teachers, similarly to Farheen. A lot of my family, I had a huge support system from my parents who really helped me pursue in what I wanted to do. I did do sort of work experience in the accounting sort of firm. So I did a small accounting firm in Luton, I think in the Luton Town Centre, called Durrani and Co. They were actually family friends. So I did a sort of work experience during my time at university, so during my second year. And that also really helped gain my interest in accounting. It was something that I really wanted to do. The manager there also was so supportive, and he said to me that, you should sort of aim for the big four. I didn't obviously believe in myself that I'd ever get a job at the big four, but obviously here I am now working for Deloitte, so it can be done and it is possible to achieve.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you, Saman. And lastly, Hannan. Now, Hannan, you work in the field of philanthropy, which I suppose will need a little bit of clarification. You work in the charitable sector, but it's a little bit more complex than that. But describe your own journey, because you've had an interesting one.
Yeah, thank you, Amar. So I didn't actually start off in philanthropy, funny enough. I've pivoted between sort of business development, community development, and international development. So it's quite development orientated, and then ended up in philanthropy because that's sort of the money behind the movements. And philanthropy, those of you that don't know, it's a simple definition would be the desire to promote the welfare of others. So it's like using private means to do public good. So I studied. Well, I went to Chorley Boys, similar to Saman and Farheen. Then went on to college. In college, I studied business administration, finance, critical thinking, and I took critical thinking up actually after I flunked maths, which, looking back at it now, actually done me a favor. Left college, went on to study business management at the University of Greenwich, and I think I was learning about some business models like Pareto's law, etc. Some of the people that might be in college studying this, or perhaps even in high school, and I never really took it all in as much as I could have. But anyway, fast forward a couple of years, when I was putting it into practice, that's when I reflected and I said, oh, actually, I know what this is, I know what that is, and then I was able to basically apply some of the things that I'd picked up throughout the early years of academia. Then ended up coming across a small business development opportunity in Kenya, and this is going back to 2015, I think. And I went abroad, part of this international. Some of the young people might be familiar with NCS, National Citizen Service. This was called ICS, International Citizen Service. It was a similar sort of program for a couple of months. Went abroad, worked there, so applied the business skills there, but it was the first time I was exposed to an international, international environments. It was quite the culture shock. Came back, then pivoted again into local businesses, working with a bunch of different friends and started investing and things like that. And then I ended up going abroad again into China, and that was a community development project again, trying to tackle some of the cultural barriers when it comes to international business and tourism. So it was taking things that I learned from the previous role and then applying it and continuing to grow and take the next step forward, basically. I came back to the UK after China, and I was still involved in the international development sphere in London, and with some great non-governmental organizations, which are NGOs, and then ended up working for a foundation, which was the first sort of exposure to the foundation philanthropic sector in Colombia. And I was there a little over a year. It was a faith-based foundation, actually, Orthodox Christian, and it was the focus of it was education, but also very much around aspirations, and because it was a Afro-Colombian community, they had great space for tourism, so there was an element of business, but it required a lot of developing. So that was an amalgamation of everything that I'd learned, ranging from tourism, business, international development, community development, etc., and all put into one. And then I really had to knuckle down when I was there, and then came back, and since then set up a small business, and also work which is a social impact business. But mainly now I work at Bedfordshire and Luton Community Foundation as a grants and programs manager, where I work on sort of several donor advised funds and manage a trust, which kind of pulls on all of the skills that I've picked up over the last 10 years or so. Hope I didn't run over time there.
No, thank you, Hannan. Really,
it's a bit of a whirlwind of a journey.
Well, yeah, it's you really clocked up the air miles and lots of stuff for us to unpick as well. Actually, I'll stick with you, Hannan, for my next question then, because you've mentioned the Kenya, China, Colombia, but you know you grew up in the I suppose all of us did. Sort of, I'm from Bury Park. You guys are from the Dallow area. But describe your sort of upbringing. What was it like growing up in Dallow?
Yeah, it's funny because after every experience, I'd always end up back in Dallow, and I remember just getting off the plane, coming back into Dallow, and thinking, "Home, sweet home." It's one of those things. Growing up in Dallow is interesting because you really, well, I think it's a two-pronged sword. Sometimes you can be surrounded by people and ideas, and you're supported in a way where you can actually aspire to things beyond what's been done before you. And then at the other side of things, you could be exposed to certain elements of society which aren't great for your personal development. They aren't great for society as a whole, and fall into certain traps. And that, I think, trying to find a balance between the two and walk along a right path. I think that's where most youngsters, when I was growing up, found the battle. But the thing I love about Dallow is the sense of community. I don't think I've found it in many other places when I've gone to live away, even in whatever cities, whether it's in this country or abroad. You really get, I think, in this town, you get that sense of community where there's always people looking out for you. And also, it's just, I think growing up in a place like Dallow, you can make what you want of it, I suppose. But the three of us are from around here, and I think it just goes to show that, there's no sort of predetermined path that you need to stick to.
And I really like that outlook you've just described there as well. You kind of forge your own journey in life as well, and I suppose I'll just building upon that, Farheen, we were speaking of beforehand, and we've got something in common. We are both only children, so we don't have any siblings as well, and I suppose that comes with it, some additional challenges as well. But so describe your own sort of upbringing as well in the growing up in the Dallow area, and and how you feel about those experiences and how they.
Absolutely. I think we spoke recently and we said how there's something about only Charles wanting to give back to the community. And I think Luton is a really incredible place to do that. I grew up in a single parent household, but I was very lucky because I had my mum's sole devotion and attention. And a lot of my success was due to the fact that my mum was so present in sort of my education through to university. I moved out for university and, that support there, and coming back to Luton now and living here and, commuting into work, every evening when you're back in Luton, it feels like home. Like Hannan said, home is home. And it's this community that I talk about when discussing a lot of the skills I've gained that I now use in the career I'm in. For example, when I talk about teamwork, I talk about projects that I ran at Dallow Community Centre, and it's it's the community that sort of made you, and that's a lot of that is the reason why I'm at this point where I think it's really important to talk about what you do and how you can support the community, how you can raise aspirations. But in terms of background, I think the support system is essential. The family element, friends, the people you're around. I was lucky to be around very, very strong women. So my mum, my grandma, people in the family that just shun strength, independence, and the values that I was always trying to reflect throughout, not just my career, but the person I am. And I always say that your support system plays a huge part in where you end up. And like Hannan said, in these sort of communities, it's very easy to fall into traps where you almost go into a rabbit hole you can't escape. You don't see a way out. But again, switching that a bit, Luton offers you so many opportunities to develop who you are as a person. We're such a community, tight-knit community where we're always running projects, running events that allow young people to get involved, to come in on weekends, evenings, radio shows, charity events. There's so many, every weekend there's something going on in our local community centres. And I think that is a platform for our young people to start off early, to get in there, to get involved, to build their interpersonal skills to begin with. Because as a basis for, any career, that's what you need, confidence. And that's a lot of it comes from these events and your support system, which can range from your family. Sometimes not always so. Sometimes it's you have difficult family lives, but then you find that support in the local institutions, in colleges, in schools. And I think, talking on behalf of all of us that studied at Chorley High School for Girls and Boys and Luton Sixth Form College, they are incredible institutions when it comes to supporting their students, and they're dedicated to the cause. And it's just about making sure that you are making the most of the opportunities around you and also being aware of them.
Brilliant, thank you, Farheen. Saman, you grew up in the Dallow area also. What advice do you give to young people, especially building on what Farheen says there about just sort of, just underlining the importance of, I suppose, encouraging young people to always think about the opportunities that lie there, so lie around them. So what advice do you give to young people?
Okay, so my advice to young people would be to aim high. It is possible to achieve. You can achieve growing up, obviously, in the Dallow area as well, as Hannan and Farheen also mentioned. We've got such a good community here. I was also, similarly to Hannan and Farheen, brought up in a multicultural society. It's a multicultural town. Obviously, I've absolutely loved growing up in Luton, to be honest with you. The opportunities here, the community here, everyone has been so supportive. And similarly, I just wanted to touch on how they've said you can go to one of two ways. So you can obviously be supported by people, you can also fall into a hole or into a trap. But even if you do fall into a trap, or if you do find yourself going astray or another direction, there is always so much help around in the community. There's always so many people that you can talk to, your neighbor, someone that's also has achieved or has done really well. You can always go and speak to them. I myself, growing up here, actually had a neighbour who I used to look up to. She was also in the accounting field. You know, I used to look at her and, okay, she went to, you know, University of Luton. She also grew up here. She's also doing really well in accounting. So, you know, you can always look at people around you who've also been, you know, supportive, and growing up in this town, you have that help. So as Farheen said, you've got community workshops, and Hannan said as well, and so much to sort of look towards. So yeah, I would say that always set yourself a goal. My dad actually always said to me that, well, when I was in high school, actually, when I was doing my GCSEs, that your GCSEs can either make or break your life. So choose what you want to do. So obviously, I think that, you know, if you do well from the start, then you can do it if you set yourself a goal. And once you've sort of aimed high for education, aimed high for whatever you want to do, whether it's setting up a business after college or university, aim high, set yourself a goal. Once you've set it, you can achieve that goal. So similarly to me, how I said, growing up in Luton, and people said to me, you know, don't go to University of Bedfordshire, go to, say, for example, elite universities or other universities that will give you that opportunity to sort of get better jobs once you've finished your once you've completed your graduation, or you know, just you won't get many opportunities in Luton. I sort of disagree with that. I actually went to University of Luton. I chose to go here actually because of the accounting qualification that I wanted to do, ACCA. That University of Luton was giving me maximum exemptions from ACCA, so the qualification that I wanted to do. So for me, that was a plus point. And going to university here was great for me. I had that university experience, even though my parents had fully given me you know, support to, I can move out of the university. I know not many people do, but I did have that support to, you know, if I wanted to, but I chose to go here, and I would actually I do not regret it even one bit. I had great university life, great friends, great people around me. I got to meet people even from around the world coming to university. So I would suggest that set yourself a goal, whatever university that you go to be honest with you, set yourself goals, and it can be achieved, because at the end of the day, you can land yourself in a better position than what people might think that you can or cannot be. So yeah, that's what my sort of advice would be, to set yourself goals.
Listeners, you're joining us here on the Future Show. I'm your host, Amar Azam. We're fast coming up to the end of the first half of this fascinating discussion with Farheen Ahmed, Hannan Ali, and Saman, who described their I suppose their humble beginnings. Growing up in Luton, in the Dallow area, going on to high schools in the town, colleges, and then after that, their own journeys into their respective professions. We will be continuing this discussion after the break, and speaking more about what it means to them to inspire young people and invest their time and be a part of providing those opportunities for young people, because after all, we've all given those opportunities ourselves as well. So we've got a few minutes left, but Hannan, I want to come back to you actually, and something I really empathize with, but you described the flunking maths. I think that's the expression you used. I flunked economics at Luton Sixth Form College. I just suppose it just wasn't for me. What were the experiences? What was that particular experience and the learning you took away from that?
Flunking. Well, this is the thing, Amma, isn't it? It's I flunked maths, and I have I'm a big fan of statistics and probability and all of that, and you know, but flunking maths in itself led me to take up critical thinking, and I took up critical thinking at AS level, and once I started applying that later on in life, some of those thinking models is what helps me do my day job, because you have to challenge your own biases, your own beliefs, and especially when you're in sort of positions of power, you really need to, in order to remain humble and do a better job, that those are the things that you need to be thinking about. So I think just because you fail at something doesn't, you have to sort of have this faith, and as a Muslim, I a strong faith in Qadr and all. So I think everything happens for whatever reason it is, and sometimes you don't understand it. Because I thought I was great at maths. I came out of high school with an A in maths, and I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to do fine. But I think I learned later on in life to just trust the sort of knocks you take, and reflect. That's the key thing.
That's a really, really insightful way of looking at things as well. And sometimes we all have to learn those lessons because they come as a wake up call. Sometimes we may have that blind spot in our lives. I went into my economics A level thinking, well, actually, you know what? Actually, this is for me as well. And it really, really, I suppose, humbled me, and I started again. I spent an extra year at Luton Sixth Form College, in fact, as well. And from there, I explored my love for journalism. But that still took a bit of time. I had a psychology degree in the middle as well. But no, Hannan, thank you for that. It's been really, really interesting. Farheen, Saman, we're going to pick up this discussion after the break, and listeners, do join us. Assalamu alaikum, listeners, and welcome back to the second half of this edition of the Future Show here on Inspire FM. I'm your host, Amar Azam. The Future Show is a look at all things careers and education in our town. Before the break, we were joined by Farheen Ahmed, Hannan, Ali and Saman Butt, reflecting on growing up in the town and their career journeys. They shared with us their inspiration behind their work with young people, as well as why they feel so passionately about wanting to create opportunities. Like me, many of our guests are part of the Unleashing Potential Network, and through their efforts they support the charity's work in communities around our town. In this half of the show, we carry on the discussion with the inspirational trio, part of the Unleashing Potential Network of mentors. If you would like to join the network and be a part of creating change, get in contact with us in social media or contact us at Inspire FM. We are always looking for guests to join the conversation here on the Future Show. Do get in touch with us if you would like to contribute to the show. We now return to this discussion with Farheen, Hannan and Saman. Assalamu alaikum, listeners, and welcome back to the second half of this show, looking at all things careers, and in particular we've had a fascinating first half speaking with Farheen Ahmed, Hannan, Ali and Saman Butt about their particular career journeys and their reflections upon what's it been like growing up, going to school in the town, growing up in the Dallow area, and from there, progressing into the world of work. In this half of the show, we're going to be speaking more about opportunity, and in particular the opportunities we've had, but also those that we try to create in our lives for young people and the next generation as well. Hannan, before the break, you referenced remaining humble and it being an important part of your character. Tell us a little bit more about that, because it is so important, especially in our day-to-day lives. You can kind of get carried away with being busy, but I suppose that constant reminder that we are trying to, that we need to be doing good should be there all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think it all starts with gratitude. You wake up first thing in the morning and you say Alhamdulillah, and you just think of sort of 5 things in the morning that you are grateful for, and the list will just go on. Like you could start being grateful for your eyes and just having limbs, and just being able to get up out of bed and then have breakfast and have a roof over your head and whatnot. So we are incredibly privileged. I think gratitude is where it all starts. Once going around work, I think even working in the charity sector, and then you come across stories and you see things and you hear some of the best of society and some of the worst of society. I think that it just sort of, I think it's a reflection thing, because if I didn't take the time out to check where I was going constantly, and making sure that the charity element and the wanting to do good, that sort of altruistic element, was not in the right place. I think it's very easy to drift off into own things. So some people do charity out of selfishness or ego or whatever. I think, you know, Islam teaches us to be very humble about all that and keep those thoughts in check, and very much practice gratitude and selflessness. So yeah, I think it all starts with that first, appreciating your own privilege, and then wanting to do. So there's this movement in the philanthropic sector called effective altruism, which is trying to do the most good that you can in any given moment. Again, linked to maths slightly, despite me flunking maths. But you know, that's something that keeps that's something I keep asking myself: am I doing the most good that I can do in this given moment? And if the answer is no, then I think, well, what more can I do? And if the answer is yes, then I know I've given it my all.
Thank you, Farheen. We spoke briefly before the break about both of us being only children as well, and not perhaps growing up without that sort of reliance and generating that sort of dependency and learning from, you know, being very sort of introspective as well. How does that sort of fit in with what, you know, what we as communities should be doing in terms of being self-reflective and extending a hand out to others, especially those that perhaps may not be as privileged?
Absolutely. I think self-reflection is a really huge part of growth. And especially when you think you make it when it comes to your careers, and you get to places which are difficult, and you go through barriers and hurdles, and you get to a certain point where you're like, you know, I came through these hoops and hurdles, I've made it to this point where I wanted to be. It's very easy at that point to forget what you've gone through to get to where you're, what support you needed, you know, what you as a younger self required to get to where you are today. So I think it's really easy to forget that. And that's when self-reflection comes in, when you need to really look back at, what do I now have that the younger me didn't have, and what can I give to people with similar aspirations in the local communities, which they may need for their career path. So, you know, it could be anything. It could be like someone's in accounting, Hannan's in philanthropy. It could be any career you go for, medicine, you know, any career, big or small. There's no different. It's about how you're trying to improve yourself to get there. And I think when you're self-reflecting, you're always looking for, like Hannan said, ways to do good and ways to give back. At least I hope people that come from humble beginnings look back with that aim to then, you know, put it back into society. So I think it's really important that people in our community, and I think we are generally a very good community at doing that, at going back into community events, you know, workshops here and there, like we did recently at a local community centre, a workshop around just business ideas, and allowed young people to sort of think creatively about projects and, you know, have an entrepreneurial mindset. I think those kind of events are really good, because as a basis, they are where you start building your skills of confidence, of speaking, and then they remember the people that were around them. They remember that they have someone to go to, and they have questions around various careers, or even just questions around education, you know, how to navigate going from college to university or from school to college. Sometimes you don't have people within your homes that can answer those questions. And I think we often take for granted when we have strong support systems at home, that there's always somebody that you can check something with, that, you know, how do I apply for this, or how do I go there? But that is definitely something we take for granted, and something that's not prevalent in every household. So to be able to put yourself out there as somebody who's seen challenges and has, you know, learnt lessons and has a lot of sort of hindsight to give back to young people, I think it's paramount. And I think while it's so very good as a community in doing that, there's no end to it. You can never stop helping and just bringing back your skills and your experience for the betterment of our growing community.
Thank you, Farheen. Saman, we were speaking off air, and you mentioned that you actually returned to the University of Bedfordshire to speak to students about careers in accounting. How did that feel?
Yeah, correct. So yeah, I came back as part of Deloitte Careers Workshop. So I volunteered to come back to University of Bedfordshire and sort of carry this workshop out. And it actually felt, obviously felt really, it felt weird coming back to a place where I sort of started it all, and it was quite daunting at the start, when you're starting university, and once you leave here, you need to get out there, and you're into the big bad world now, and you need to start working, and all of those sort of thoughts came back rushing back to my head, and where I am now, and I can finally be back at this place and sort of give back, and maybe give students advice to sort of what to do next. I actually saw sort of myself sitting there in that chair, in that seat, sort of thinking about when other sort of companies would come and do workshops there, and sort of it just made me go back in time a little. So that was quite refreshing to go back and see. But yeah, sort of carrying out workshop with students, and then seeing them with that passion, the same passion that I sort of had. I really want to be there, really want to be, at that position and at that stage in life, working, and where I want to be going. So they would ask me questions, and students sort of came up to me at the end, and they were asking, "Oh, can we add you on LinkedIn?" And just that sort of sense of feeling that someone can come up to you and ask you, and you can sort of return back to the community, give back. That felt really great. So yeah, that was really nice to sort of just go back to see where I began my journey, and now I'm sort of helping people with their journeys. So yeah, that was really nice.
Thank you, Saman. The idea for this show came about because we really wanted to explore and this issue of social justice and what it actually means, and what it means in terms of impacting upon the lives of young people. We hear this term social mobility. We hear about the difficulties that young people have in the workplace, especially those that come from that come from our backgrounds as well. And Farheen, you touched upon it there with the workshop we ran recently at the Raise Up Foundation in partnership with Luton Food Bank, Inspire FM and Connect for Causes. Those sorts of things are so impactful for young people. I believe because growing up in Bury Park and not perhaps having access to as many of those opportunities that I would have liked, that sort of almost makes me even more passionate about being part of them, these sorts of initiatives for young people. I think we were reflecting upon that with Hannan at the workshop recently, the Dragon's Den. So Farheen, what does social justice mean to you, and why does it mean so much to you?
I think it means so much because I firsthand understand that there'll always be people that are more privileged than you are. And taking, for example, when I was applying to uni, or when I was applying to sort of internships at big law firms, I knew that a lot of those applicants will be kids of partners at those law firms, and that they'll have, a foot up in applying for those sort of opportunities. And with young people in our communities, they don't always have that extra layer of support. And it's exactly why that I care for social mobility and social justice so much, because often, very, very often, a lot of these students are equally as talented, if not more, than those that have that additional support at home. And I think social mobility is just really, really important in our community, because we have what I think a lot of talent, a lot of skilled young people. I've gone back to Sixth Form College and had workshops. I've gone back to Chorley High School for Girls and done sort of workshops around political issues, and you just listen to the young people and their opinions, and you understand just how remarkable their thinking is, and that all they lack is that almost ladder into their real potential. And it's exactly why we need to do so much more than we are. And by all means, we're doing a lot compared to a lot of other towns, I guess, because of the diversity we are rich in. But also, generally, there are a lot of people that are keen to support young people. But you understand from those kind of events how important it is, because like someone said, a lot of them after those sessions come to you and they say, you know, can we connect with you on LinkedIn? Can we reach out to you for a coffee? Can we have a discussion about this? And you realize how much talent there is and how much they require that booster into those professions that they're seeking, or professions that they might not have heard of, but that could appeal to them just by one conversation. And I think, you know, that is what social justice means to me, making sure that nobody in your community is going to be wasted talent, that the talent that is here is leveraged and they know where they can go to become somebody who they probably don't see themselves being at this point, but somebody else can then drill that into them, that you have this potential that you can chase. And that's what social mobility and social justice means to me.
Hannan, reflecting upon the workshop, and given that you and I, we actually worked on community projects many years ago in Luton, but I've just been listening to this fascinating insight as well, especially from what Farheen said about what social justice means to her. But I also picked up on her description of the talent and the untapped potential from young people, and the workshop we ran a few weeks ago. We really saw that, you know, young people came into this workshop first day of half term, didn't know each other, and a couple of hours later on they were bouncing ideas off one another, getting you know, sharing all sorts of energy and brilliance. So, you know, your thoughts on that particular experience.
Yeah, I think, well, we go back almost 10 years now, Emma, when we, you know, it's the small projects that we started from, and, you know, since then we've been crossing paths on one thing or another, and it just goes to show how there are opportunities out there that people can always get involved in. I think one thing people underestimate is the impact that they can have. There's a butterfly theory which says, you know, how do you know a butterfly flapping its wings over in Taiwan isn't causing a tornado off the coast of Mozambique or something? You know, if you can prove to me that there's no link, then fine. I'll believe that small things can't make an impact. But I think just like, don't underestimate the impact that you can do from a small thing. I was chairing a panel the other day with on a conversation about rebalancing power and providing opportunities and getting more participation from communities. And one of the panelists said, if you can do one small thing, do that one small thing. And that's how you play your part in social justice. That's how you play a part in a cause that you feel passionate about, whether it's education, whether it's you know, COP26 going on at the moment, so whether it's environmental causes, whether it's the financial system, whatever it is. I think don't underestimate what you as an individual can do and what that would mean in the wider scale of things as a group. Because we've done projects as a group, we've done individual projects, and I think it's fair to say that all of us around this table at the moment can say, you know, after you've done whatever it is that you've done, you get that feeling where you know, or you think, right, even if one person takes something away from this, I know it would have been worth it. And, you know, even if it's helping someone cross over the road, I think that small act of kindness and is a more impact, because you just don't know. Take the last year and a half, how some of the older people I come across, you know, we funded projects that look at social exclusion and problems around isolation. You just don't know, you carrying the bags with someone across the road, what that means to them. You might have been the first person they've conversated with in the last year and a half. So that in itself could be a life-saving conversation. So don't underestimate the impact that you can make from a small act.
Thank you, Hannan. Listeners, we're fast coming to the end of what's been a brilliant, wonderful discussion with Farheen Ahmed, Saman, and most recently you heard Hannan Ali giving his, you know, sharing his opinions of what social justice means to him as well. Saman, I just wanted to ask you, growing up in Dallow, going to Chorney High School for Girls, you know, you must pinch yourself sometimes, you know, at now your journey working for Deloitte as a finance analyst. How did it feel?
Yeah, it feels great actually. Being at the company, sometimes I'm sitting there, I'm like, wow, okay, I didn't think I'll ever make it. And you know how I think we were talking about this earlier as well, how I never thought that I will get there, because people would always push me back, especially in this town. There were people that would say to me that, oh, you might not be able to, you know, get to the jobs that you want to because you've worked, because you've been, you know, either you've been brought up in Luton or you've gone to university here, so you may not have the same opportunities that other people may have had. But alhamdulillah, obviously I've had the opportunity, and it obviously, yeah, it feels surreal. So yeah, I would say to the youth of our town that you can do it no matter what university you go to. If you put in the hard work, you set yourself goals, it is possible. So perseverance, ambition, passion, it can be done. So yeah, growing up in Luton is not bad at all. So obviously I have traveled to many other countries. I've traveled quite a bit. I've been lucky enough to travel, and coming back home to Luton is always like, yes, this is home sweet home, as Hannan and Farheen mentioned earlier as well. So, but yeah, it just always have that goal. For, I think that would be my advice for the youth: surround yourself with good people, have a good group of friends that will lift you. Yeah, so you know, it is possible and it is achievable.
Thank you. We're coming to the end, and I just wanted to ask you all, you know, now that I suppose we've had a chance to reflect privately and on the show as well, and we've spoken about how we can mobilize young people and to really you know do what they can in their communities. You know, I'm passionate about voluntary work, for example. I you know, whenever I speak with parents, I always encourage them to get involved with their children in voluntary work, and those opportunities will present themselves if you look hard enough as well. So I suppose in just last few moments, then, what sorts of things would you like to see in Luton? For those listening to the show that I suppose, like yourselves, professionals that have been enthused and inspired by your words, what sort of thing would you like to create with them? Farheen, I'll come to you with that one.
I think your point about voluntary work, Amar, is really, really important. I think some of my funnest memories and also most rewarding were getting involved in local charity events. And alhamdulillah, we are a very charitable town. We do a lot of events here and there where volunteers are always needed. We recently did a fundraiser at the local community centre to raise money for Islamic relief projects. So there are a lot of those things that happen which you can get involved with. And as a starting point, they are your platform to network with other people, like-minded people that are also doing these projects, but also to improve your skills, to learn about time management, to learn about, team working, interpersonal skills. So I think definitely would encourage grabbing those opportunities where you see them, or even initiating them. Bring your leadership skills out, plan something. You can lead on a project. I was probably 16 when I started helping out with community projects and trying to think about what would be good ideas: car washes, bake sales, things like that. There's always need for charity work, and I would highly encourage volunteers and voluntary work in that space, but also generally around mentorships, mentoring young people. You have a lot of year 11s, year 12s that have a lot of good knowledge post GCSEs that can then give back to their local schools. So anything around you, wherever you look, there'll always be an opportunity that can help you develop. And it's crazy how 10 years later, I still refer to examples 10 years ago. And those experiences are so understated. So I would always encourage local people to make the most of the opportunities around them.
Brilliant. Thank you. Saman, briefly, just your closing thoughts about being part of creating opportunities for young people.
I think I just wanted to sort of follow on what Farheen was saying actually about volunteering. So So just advice-wise, I would suggest, obviously, for the youth to sort of go and look for voluntary work. You actually have to get out there, make your CV, go door to door. So I used to actually go and hand in my CV looking for voluntary work. So ask people, and there are companies out there that would would take you on, especially if you're working voluntary. They're always looking for people. So a couple of months experience, that looks great on your CV. That would be my advice, to sort of go out there, take your CV, update it, and obviously just go and be a friendly face and go out there and just say, hey, I'm looking for voluntary work, and whatever profession you want to go into, base it on that, and or go to those sort of places, and there are people out there willing to take you on. So whether it's law, whether it's accounting, whether it's any other business, they will be looking to sort of take you on, and obviously be on time, build on your skills, build on your leadership skills, build on your communication skills. These things are very, very helpful for you to sort of help build your future career.
Brilliant, thank you, Saman. And finally, Hannan, your thoughts about what you'd like to be involved in, and how that contributes towards your own sort of self-development.
I'll continue to get involved in mentoring. If tutoring's your thing, do that. If attending events is your thing, do that. I think the first thing to ask yourself is why. If you can just start questioning what it is that you want to do and why you want to do it, the rest will come through. And if you don't know where to start with what you know. That's what I'd say. Go down to your local mosque and just ask. Say what community initiatives are going on around Luton. They've had the cleanup initiatives that have been going on. Some people, there's always something. If it's not the mosque, you can go down to your local school. If you're at sixth form, ask the college. There's always people that can connect you. So first step is to ask.
Brilliant, thank you. Thank you to you all, Farheen, Hannan and Saman. It's been a brilliant discussion. Listeners, you've been joining us here on the Future Show. My name is Amar Azam. Do join us again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you, Amar.